Good afternoon. Here we are back in HOOE Lake, exploring something else, something different today. This is the remains of a barge. We think it's called the Two Brothers, but other than that, we know nothing about it. So the game for today is to explore the site, see what we can find, measure what we can find, and then see if we can come to some kind of conclusion. I'm standing very close to the keel of the boat. So here is the middle. This is the main spine of the vessel. Heads down to beyond where the team are working over there, down to the rudder, which we'll look at in a minute. Katie at the front here is exploring at the front. She's trying to find out how long this vessel is. It's all eroded away. There's not much to see at the front end, but we might be able to get some clues. In front of me are the frames of the boat. Here's one here. This is the what would be the ribs. This is what holds the whole boat together. Bottom of the boat will be here, so we can see it's flat bottomed. That's why we know it's a barge. And it's got a slight curve here on the edge. Possibly not an English boat because of the shape. But Mallory over there is doing an excavation to try and get a realistic shape of the boat, and we can really understand who made it. Let's walk this way. It's very slippery, but luckily the mud isn't too deep. There's a lot of rubbish here. There's all sorts of things that people have left behind, like wine bottles. This one here, not particularly old, but this is all mixed in, modern rubbish mixed in with our ship. Further down, we've got side planks. This would have been part of the sides of the ship. Fairly heavily built timbers, about that sort of thickness. So this was a cargo carrying boat, something fairly strong. More bottles. See a bunch of alcoholics around here. Again, sherry, very modern. Right, coming down this way. Right, team, what are we doing? We're doing some filming. Here we go. Coming down this way, we can see a hole in the very attractive HOOE Lake mud. This is lovely stuff to dig through. It's fairly black, largely because we think it's full of coal dust. So it's quite possible that this barge was used in its final days as a coal hulk. They'd fill them full of coal, bring them alongside, and then the coal would be taken off and used for house heating and whatever else you wanted.
Can you point out the ribs, please? Can you point out the ribs there? We can see them, please. Yes. Thanks. So there's one there, yeah. Thank you, lovely.
So those ribs would go parallel to each other all the way down the boat. There are none further forward on this boat because they've all been taken out. Somebody's probably taken them out and burnt them.
And we can see the keel running along from here, can't we, very well?
Yep. Chris is standing on the keel there with he's just picked up his spade where the metal spike is. And what they're trying to do is uncover enough of this really gloopy mud to try and get the shape of the boat. In amongst all of this stuff though, is lots of rubbish. This used to be an area where ships were broken up. So there's a lot of mud, there's bits of timber, there's bits of metal, there's chains, there's bits of wire rope. It's yeah, it's pretty horrible stuff to dig through. Further aft, we've got something that actually looks like a real bit of ship. This is the rudder, or the remains of the rudder, and the stern post that the rudder would hang from. So we've got keel running down this way. It would run all the way down. It's buried underneath this mud here, underneath the dog, and then up here. This is the stern post, very strong part of the ship, which is one of the reasons it survived. On the back here is the rudder. This is the bit that moves. This is the bit that would allow the ship to change direction through the water. Here's the hinge between the two, the pintles and the gudgeons as they're called, and there'll be another set down below there. This rudder would be a typical barge shape, come down this way and then come out to be very long, out to maybe about here. It's been torn off. We've got the remains of the fasteners here that would have held it together, but they're all broken, as you can see. Oops. Leave that one there. What else can we see? We've got bolts that held it together, so we can look at these and get an estimate of when she was built. They're iron bolts, and they're very, very heavily corroded, but if we find some nicer ones, we might be able to get some style out of them, some indication of when they were made. And then coming back even further, we've got the broken remains of lots and lots of other vessels. There was at least half a dozen broken up in this area here, and there was another barge that was running alongside here at the end of the stone quay, one called the Bertie, and there's nothing left of her that's visible. Her keel is still in the mud, but as yet we've never dug it out.
You said there was something interesting, Peter, about the quay.
Oh yes, the quay is, I don't know much about the quay. Hopefully somebody will be able to tell us a bit more about it, but it looks like it's been built in all sorts of interesting stages. So, looking at the top, it looks like it was built from here that way, and this part here is new. There's a very clean join between the two. This looks like an extension. And this part on the top, which would have been here, but obviously it's just fallen off.
This is the extension.
This bit,
here, yes.
This bit here looks like an extension. This obviously wasn't long enough. But it looks like they put this on as a flat platform where you could walk on it. But then at a later date, somebody's put all the other stones on the top to stop somebody walking up there. That's how it appears just from first sight. If anybody actually knows how and why it was built, then
well, perhaps we'll get an answer.
we might get an answer. It's protection for this end of the lake, but it's a huge structure. And it seems like an odd thing to do.
Can we have a look at some of the artefacts you found here?
Yes, yes. Well, firstly, there's lots of this. There's lots of distressed timber. So this stuff is pretty, it's not particularly informative. It's all eroded away. The marine life's chewed at it, and it's been eroded by the sea. So this stuff doesn't really tell us much. Through it though, we do end up with ship's fasteners, things that held the ship together. And so we find a few of these lying around. They'll tell us about how the ship was built. There's lots and lots of broken timber here. Further forward, again over the tops of broken timbers, we found the remains of the heads, the ship's toilet.
Would you believe that? That could tell some stories.
Yes, none of which I'd want to hear. And then there's other fittings. What is this? I mean, I've not really looked at this stuff. There's looks like deck fitting here for mounting something, made of iron.
Not
particularly exciting. And then there's more stuff this way. What have we got? Sorry, it's quite hard to walk all over this stuff. I'm trying not to fall over. Oh, here we go. We've got here. Ah, yes, fasteners. So iron bolts. This one's in quite good condition.
Big, isn't it?
It's yeah, it's a good size. I mean, it's the sort of size you'd have for a vessel of this sort of shape. Rounded off at the ends. It's all kind of roundy and lumpy and bumpy because it's rusted.
No,
it's
not
corroded
a screw,
away.
Is it?
No, it's a bolt.
So it would be hammered the other end once it was in situation?
Yeah, they'd be hammered. They'd be put through and then hammered over at the ends. The bit that joined it all together is underneath this bit here, underneath this concretion. If we knocked that concretion off and had a look inside, you could probably see how it was made, but it wouldn't survive. What's this? Other non-diagnostic bits of metal. This one here, at a wild ass guess, is probably part of the rigging for the ship. And then we've seen the bottles, and yeah, lots of other non-diagnostic metalwork. It all tends to go together into a big mush, like this, and it's actually quite hard to work out what you're looking at sometimes. But because of the kind of boat this isn't going to be anything particularly important. It's going to be things that held the ship together.
And I think there's a few more things just up here, Peter, isn't there?
I don't know, let's go and have a look, see what else we can find. We got here, oh yes, bottle. So HOOE Lake's full of bottles, and lots of people find them down here. All sorts of different ages, some very old, some very new. This one's very modern, it's got a screw top, but it still shows that this is just a rubbish dump. People have been throwing things in there for years. There's been discussions recently about pollution in HOOE Lake and rubbish and all the rest of it. This is something that you say is, yes, it's rubbish, but it's glass. It doesn't hurt anybody. So although it's not necessarily nice to look at, it's not a pollutant. It's not going to damage anybody, and in fact it will probably provide a nice little home for a crab.
And there are a few things here done by this piece of wood. There they are here.
These guys here. Oh, what do we got? Ah, well, we do have lots of pollutants here. We've got plastic. There's lots of plastic in HOOE Lake as well. It's been, you know, as well as a very old rubbish dump full of very old ships, there's quite a few modern ones in here as well. And we don't like those because they break apart and the plastics from them, they get into the marine environment. So here's a bit of engine. That's what it looks like, an engine mounting, all broken up. But again, it's probably not from this ship. This was a shipbreaker's here. So this is just a smashed up piece of something or other.
Now, what is that?
Well, it looks like galley bricks. Quite possibly galley bricks. It's came out the bottom of here, so it might be what the cook stood on when he was cooking the dinner. And then the rest of this, again, broken bits of ship. This one's a piece of fastener, heavily corroded. And then another fastener there.
And that fastener's much smaller, isn't it?
It's just a shorter one. It would have done the same job, hold two bits of wood together, but it's got a big rove on the end of it, this big sticky out bit here. So that would have been, acted as a big washer, just to spread the load a little bit, stop it pulling through the wood. And then a piece of metal, and then lots of plastics. And there's lots of linoleum here, lots of lino. So maybe in the later days, the bottom of the boat had lino in it, so perhaps people lived in it. Who knows?
Peter, thank you very much. Thank you.